All right, fellas, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know these are kind of crazy times that we're living in, but you all decided to come and hang out a little bit. Thank you so much for being here and just kind of allowing us to pick your brain a little bit about what's going on in the world today and what we're dealing with. And man, it's just a crazy time we're living in. Really crazy time that we're living in. But I know that God's taking care of us, and thankfully we're all in the land of the living, and God's done just a phenomenal job of keeping his people during this time. And really this conversation, the reason we wanted to bring you all together is just to kind of hear the hearts of fathers during this season. Men who are on the front lines of trying to protect their families, trying to provide for their families, trying to make sense of these crazy times that we're living in, and just kind of give context to what we're dealing with. We know Father's Day is here, and happy Father's Day to all of you. We appreciate everything that you do for your families and being strong men in our communities. But just to kind of get the ball rolling, I'm going to start off with the most deep, introspective question that I can think of. So are y'all ready to get in this? All right, so here we go. Did Michael Jordan keep Isaiah Thomas off the Dream Team, 1992? Break it down for me. Did he keep him off the team, or what happened?
I mean, I think he played a big role in keeping him off the team.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think Chuck Daly, who was Isaiah's coach, has to take some responsibility for that. You know,
Right.
I mean, if you're the coach of the Dream Team, Isaiah's your player during the regular season. I'm about to fight against Mike. Somebody needed to stand up against Mike, you know? So, I mean, to me, that documentary was incredible because as a Michael Jordan production, for you to still come out looking like a bad guy, either that's what you want or that's who you really are. One of the two. And you could not avoid it. So, yeah, I think Mike kept him off the team, though.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Isaiah had a lot of agitations with several key players. You know, he had beef with Bird, with Magic, with Jordan, and so by them not saying anything, it was, you know, when they didn't put him on there, it was almost like they were saying, we're good with it. You know, and so they may not have said don't put him on the team, but they wasn't mad because he wasn't on the team.
I mean, it's there. It's several people that didn't want him on the team, but you know they did well. I guess it's all that matters. And I'm a Laker fan, so I don't really care about Jordan, but you know.
And I can't answer the question because I'm a LeBron fan, so that's a little too deep for me.
It's too deep. Okay. So are we gonna go into the big elephant in the room then? Is it Mike or is it LeBron? Who we picking? Let's just put it on the table right now.
So let me start it then, because again I'm a Laker fan.
Okay.
So I hated Jordan. He was good, but I hated Jordan because again I'm a Laker fan. So when they beat the Lakers, I hated that. I hated Jordan.
Dang.
To say he's the greatest, he's great. But I mean, if we're talking about greatest, Bill Russell has 11 rings. Kareem has 7. You know, so I mean to say, but you look at the body of work. LeBron has been to 9 straight championships. I mean, he didn't win 9, but he's been to 9. Personally, I think Magic Johnson is the best. And you can't. And then barbershop talk. You can't compare. Michael Jordan and LeBron James because they 2 players. I think you can compare Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I think you can compare LeBron James to Magic Johnson because they're 2 different type players. That's me. But I hated Jordan.
Well, for me, I always say that from what I watched, Jordan was the best on the floor. Like literally ball skills, shooting ability,
I can see that.
Defense, drive to win, everything skill-wise on the floor. In my opinion, Jordan was the best. LeBron, however, has been, to me, the best all around as far as community, as far as, you know, even in these times like this, you know, somebody that has always stood up for those who didn't have a voice. And I thought that was always important. That was always something that I did not like about was that Republicans buy shoes too. That was a cop out to me. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't stand up for your community when you have that type of platform, that type of chance, and to see what LeBron has done with the school and all of that. Jordan's the best on the floor. LeBron's the best all around for me.
Great point.
I've been Michael Jordan and LeBron fans from way back, when LeBron was in high school and Jordan was in college, and from when he had hair, coming all the way, through. And I'd have to say that Michael still holds the greatest of all time. He still has the GOAT right now, but I believe that the GOAT title is obtainable to LeBron with a little bit more work. He's although he's beaten a lot of Michael's records, I still feel like you have to have those titles. You have to have them championships to be able to say you the GOAT. And so he's got a few. But I think he's gonna need at least 2, maybe 3 more to really be able to say it. Although his body of work has been great, and I often feel like Jax was saying is he's definitely been, he's more of an advocate when it comes to speaking up for rights, of black people and just social justice and everything. So
That's true.
But if you go, so again, if you're gonna go on rings, there's people who have more rings. Kareem, Bill Russell has more rings. If you're gonna go on rings,
that's part of it. The rings is part of it.
So
not the only thing.
So the debate remains.
Yeah.
Obviously, we are split. We don't know. Is it about the rings? Is it about off court? Is it about the total package? It's split. Different eras, different times, different styles, different positions. It's split. So I'll leave it there. We will table that particular question. But I like how we were talking about LeBron's advocacy and his work in the community, especially now more than ever, right? Like
absolutely.
if we can even say, like, if Jordan existed and was playing during these times, would he have stepped up that way? Would he have said anything? Would he have put his career in jeopardy like that? We don't know. This is hypotheticals. But one question that I did want to throw out there to you all is, as we process these times with the pandemic, what have we been down in? Restriction orders for what, like 3-4 months now? And we're talking about everything that's going on with just the revolution, really, that's taking place right now, and advocating for social justice within our communities. How do we begin to kind of help our own children as fathers kind of process everything that they've dealt with over these past couple months? Most children don't go through half of this as they're growing up in life, what we're seeing right now. But they've gone through a pandemic and are currently going through one, and everything that they're seeing on the news. It almost makes you want to turn the TV off. Tell your children, just turn it off, take a break. There's a lot to take in for a young forming mind. How do you even help them begin to process what they're seeing every day?
you gotta have the conversation. It's time out for elephants in the room. Gotta sit down and have a conversation. As black fathers, and we can't just say if you have sons, because our daughters are dying too.
Right.
You've got to have the real conversation with your family, with your spouse, with your kids, and you've got to talk about it. How do you handle a situation if you're stopped by the police? My son just turned 15 years old. He's 6'3". It could be 1,000 degrees outside, and my son is a typical teenager. Want to have a hoodie on. And I'm like, man, you can't wear this, it's nothing wrong with having a hoodie, but you can't wear it out like that. You got to be careful. And so you got to have these conversations. What you cannot do. If you're stopped by the police, what you do. And then you even got to have these conversations with your daughters. And even for us as men, we're not exempt as grown men. So this is it's not new. But it's like a lynching was filmed, and so the revolution is being televised. It happened, and there's anger all over the world. And then it would be one thing if it happened and then there were no more for the next couple of weeks. There's been almost a death every day.
Every day.
There was a death yesterday. I mean, there's been a death every
A lynching
day.
in California.
Every day.
Yeah.
And we still have to deal with this. So you got to have a conversation. I think we got to put ourselves in position. We got to position ourselves. You know, so there's a whole agenda on buying black and supporting black. Things that we got to do to take care of. Nobody's coming in to our community to save us. And so we've got to do it ourselves. I heard this gentleman say, you know, people need to come together. The Crips and the Bloods, y'all need to stop fighting each other and work together. You know, churches, we can't be this church against that. We got to come together and save ourselves because nobody's coming in to do it for us.
And even what you talking about putting yourself in a position, my situation is a little different because my son is 3 years old. So I have to figure out what schools am I gonna put him in. I just posted something on Facebook like, does anybody know anything about homeschooling? Because we want them to have a good education, but where are the good educations? It's in the suburbs. So I have to figure out the education of where I'm gonna put him. Is he gonna be the only black kid in there? Is he gonna have to deal with the same situations that I've dealt with going to Blue Springs South, being the only black kid in the school, and not knowing what to do? So that's why I'm trying to put myself in a position to have my son not deal with those certain realities.
Yeah. Man, that's so huge because, like you said, as a parent, you only want the best for your kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we've been almost conditioned, you know, that we do have to come to the suburbs in order to get that best education. And then I look back at my son and some of the things that I've heard him talk about. This past week even, there was a whole big kind of furor going around with this black at BSS, in BSS school district, Blue Springs School District, where all these kids are telling all these stories about what they went through being a black kid in the Blue Springs School District. It's incredible, you know. And so my son and I were having a discussion about when my daughter was younger, she went to an Alvin Ailey dance camp at Paseo High School. And I remember she was like 12 or 13. And I remember dropping her off there, and they had the metal detectors, you know. And I always said it felt like prison to me. I hated it. I hated every minute of it. And my son told me, he said, you know, Dad, I would have been more comfortable at school if they would have had metal detectors. And he went to Blue Springs South, he said, because we had guys that was talking about coming in and shooting up the school every day. Wow. And it blew me away, man, to think that, and then you heap on all the racism that just straight up was racist stuff that was going on at the same time. So, like I think that you mentioned is so great, buying black and building our own communities. When we've got to find a way to make our own schools be the place to go for our kids to get education. I heard Killer Mike talk about that a lot, you know, that you have to put kids in a position, like he was saying in his schools in Atlanta, you know, it's all named after black people, there's black people running it, you know, they're there to encourage these kids at such a tender and important age when they're 13, 14 years old, and they need those kind of examples. Those kind of examples were there for them. And so that's something I really, you know, that to me is going to be part of this revolution, and it is a revolution going on.
You know, you know, and you raised a good point when you talk about that we need to not only talk to our boys, but our girls too. I've had the conversation with my daughter about getting pulled over once. I've had the conversation with my son many a times, and his little friends when they would come over. I'd have that conversation, and I've always felt like my son was more in danger than my daughter. So I had the conversation just because of her skin color, but I had the conversation with my son not just because of the skin color, but because he was a male. And all of his friends, when they come and hang out, you know, over at the house, you know, I sit them all down and just say, hey, look, 10 and 2, you keep your hands there. You know, you have your driver's license and your registration and insurance out before they even get up to the car, you know, and you ask permission. if you need to reach to your glove box and get something. Just because, I mean, every time we look up, there's issues with black men getting shot. You know, we see it every once in a while with women, but man, black males are like an endangered, you know, species in a sense.
Because of the skin I'm in. That's the target. The target is on my back, or the target is on my neck because of the skin that I'm in.
Yeah.
And regardless to age, regardless to socioeconomic status, regardless to education status, believer, non-believer, because of the skin that I'm in. It's on my. I walked into a store. I would go from work walking into a store, and I'd leave work dressed up. Sometimes I'd have on. Most of the times I had on a jacket, and if I had on a tie, I'd walk in the store. I'd walk in the store, and I'd walk out the store, and nobody ever questioned me. They never asked me for my receipt because I guess I look. But if I'm walking in and somebody else is walking in, they stop and ask for the receipt, and so and I kind of I guess I'm cut from a different cloth. So I walked in there one day, just casual on a Saturday, so maybe some shorts and a shirt. Somebody asked me for my receipt, and I lost it. I'm like, what? My receipt? I've been here all the time, you know. And it's like this is hard to adjust to. This is hard to adjust to. I just left my daughter, and she was saying that a classmate of hers from college walked into Walmart, left, they didn't ring something up. So he got out to his car, or got inside, he got out with whatever the item was. He came back in to return it. The police, they stopped him and said that he stole it. Questioned him, so he got scared and panicked, and so he ran out, and he lost his life. He walked in to return something that they missed. Had he just left, he would still be living. College graduate, young black man.
Yeah. You know, you talked about how you go and sometimes you'd have your blazer on, you know, kind of more dressed up, and then you come back and you're more dressed down. I think subconsciously what the issue is whether they see you as a threat. You know,
Definitely.
as a black man, you know, you come in, you more kind of dressed down. They just kind of figure, okay, you probably more blue collar, and you probably got a more tendency that you're gonna do something. You know, as opposed to you coming in there, you got your suit and tie on, and they figure, well, he gonna buy whatever he's gonna get. You know, and it's a shame that we have to still be dealing with that in 2020.
And I think that's what, when we talk about having those conversations with our daughters versus our sons, sometimes for me, I know that has been the thing, is that I know how they look at my son as much more of a threat when he's out there in those interactions. He's just more of a threat to them automatically because he is a male. So, you know, it's unfortunate that we see now, and especially in these last few years, I mean, to see that young lady in Louisville, you know, that's in the house, they come in with a no-knock warrant and shoot her 8 times is scary, man, you know. But to know that that your son can be out here in the streets doing what he's supposed to be doing and could still end up dead because some officer thought he was a threat to them. So it's tough, man. You know, during this time, my son was participating in demonstrations down in Columbia and Jeff City. He's like, Dad, I'm going to Jeff City today to do this demonstration. And it's like, okay, son, you know what I mean? Like, be careful, you know, you understand what the situation is, make good decisions, be a leader, not a follower, but go ahead and voice your opinion and get that voice out there, because right now is the time, man. I'm seeing things like when you see demonstrations all over the world demonstrating against what's going on here in America. Not only all over the world, but in places like Smithville and Odessa You know what I'm saying? Places that you would never, ever think that there would be enough people that would care about these issues. But there are. So now is the time. We need to really, and that's what he and I have been talking about, our whole family's been talking about, is what are the things that we need to focus on to make changes and make this system work for us? Because it was not built. I heard my pastor say, the system is not broken. It was designed to work this way.
Amen.
So in order for us to make it work for us, we're going to have to change how it's designed in order to make it be, what we need it to be.
And I have a specific question, kind of off of what you were saying with Isaiah and him going to the demonstrations. I know both of your sons, Brother Don, Brother Jackson, they're at Mizzou. And they have a unique experience in that they went to Mizzou right after they had one of probably the most controversial situations that happened on campus, where the football team said, we will not play until racism is taken care of on the campus. How did you all deal with sending your sons to that school knowing this has just happened? And you just kind of took that deep breath. That's what kind of triggered that in my mind. Like, every day, I know a lot of moms say, like, every day my black boy walks out the house, that's what I'm doing. Taking that deep breath, like, God, please cover him. But I'll let you answer that question.
For us, I mean, we had some real apprehensions on whether to let him go down to Mizzou. But then as we started to look at it and we started watching all the things that they were putting in place, some of the stuff they already had in place, some of the different groups that they started to form. I told my wife, I said, right now, with all that has just happened, they're going to be trying harder now than they was before, because they want to prove that the school is not racist. They want to prove that the administrators and that that the climate down there is not a racist climate. And so, I told her, I said, this is probably the best time for him to go in light of all of what had just happened. I mean, because he was about a year after all of the uprising and everything. And so, we obviously monitored, and then they had, information, where they send you emails periodically if something happens on campus, just to let you know this happened, this how we resolved it, and this is what's going on now, and this is how we're going to be moving forward. So they kind of over communicated and compensated, to try to get those black students there. So it, when we started to think about it, we like, this might be the best time.
Okay.
Yeah, and we kind of felt the same way. I know for Isaiah, was part of a Missouri Black Men Initiative, MBMI, which was really designed as a kind of a mentor group, a way to make sure that these black male students were connected to each other as well as mentors. And they have the Black Student Center down there. We spend a lot of time in the BCC. The lady that runs the BCC, we've always been able to, if something didn't feel right, we could call her, So that fortunately there were enough things in place. There's actually a number of parents with our boys, Kevin and Ronell. I mean, these kids are other boys that grew up with them playing Little League football and all that are also down there. So we as parents had our own little text group or our own little email groups where we could, keep in contact with each other and watch out for each other's kids from a distance, So there were a lot of things that we had to do, but you're right. In the beginning, it was, I'm like, you sure you want to do that? And I like you said, and Don was talking about, one of the things that Mizzou did do correctly was they made sure that when they saw and targeted black students that they were recruiting, they have what they call Black MU. I mean, they have their own homecoming king and queen, the League of Black Collegians. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing still, and even right now, Isaiah and I were just talking today, and it was just on the news last week about them having a Thomas Jefferson statue on campus that they're trying to figure out a way to get that statue off campus. And, I don't know exactly. I told him I felt like, make sure you're fighting for more scholarships for black students, because quite honestly, for you to remove this statue although he was a slave owner, you're probably going to tear down everything on campus because you're talking about a school in Missouri that was started in 1835. Like, who supported that? Like, where did those resources come from? So, everything on campus was supported by somebody that probably owned slaves. You're talking about Missouri. This is not Maine. This is Missouri. This is real out here. The last slave state out here. So, you know, these some complicated issues, and he and I kind of went back and forth about that. And they're still determined they're going to get that Thomas Jefferson statue off campus, and that's fine. Do both. Make sure if you get the statue off campus, make sure you're doing something that's actually going to benefit the students. You don't we don't want to get off focus. We got to make sure that we're actually doing things that are going to benefit those students that are there now or those who are coming later. And removing that statue, although it is a good gesture, we don't want just good gestures anymore. We want real live benefits for the kids that are coming there. So they're in the mix, that's for sure. You know what I mean? These kids are right in it.
Kind of on that, talking about, you know, having a clear message of what you want. This movement with the millennials seem to be different than any movement that has ever happened.
It is.
In the sense that typically when there was a movement, there was a leader at the head of that movement. You know, whether it was Malcolm or whether it was Marcus Garvey or whether it was Martin Luther King, you know, any of the, you know, the different leaders that was helping to lead in the freedom fight, there's no clear leader. And so the messages are sometimes now getting distorted, but they don't know what the powers to be don't know who to attack.
Exactly.
They have no idea who to attack because there's no clear leader, because the movement is all over the world.
And I like what you're saying there. It's like that's the power of this movement, right? Is that everyone can be involved. It doesn't matter if you're just sitting back here behind your phone and educating people that way, or you marching out on the street. It's so different and so dynamic. That's just the power of this movement, and it's so beautiful to see. I have a friend. I mean, she's raised in the backwoods of Missouri, Podunk, whatever you want to call it. Like, and just a little white girl, grew up on a farm, man. And she blasting out Black Lives Matter harder than me. Like, she's going in. And I'm like, wow, like, look how powerful it's been when God wants to bring justice, right? When he says he's done with evil and corruption and racism, like, he is done, and it's reaching every corner. I love how you said it's different from every movement that we ever felt. But I kind of have a question that I almost want to point towards Brother Gary, and kind of how you said you have your 3-year-old son. He's completely just adorable, Amir. We love him so much. What, as a father, you're looking at these times, you're taking this in, you're seeing everything that's going on with the pandemic and all that comes from that, everything that's going on with what we're calling the revolution and this discussion. What are your hopes, or what are even your concerns as a father looking at my young son and looking at the world that I'm sitting in right now? What are the concerns? What's going through your head?
My concerns is just the same things like that I had to deal with. Be it the school systems. I want to make sure the school is right. I want to make sure the people around him. I just want him to grow up in a diverse society. And I know we talked about earlier with I noticed on Facebook a lot of people are talking about the looters and things like that. But I had to tell somebody, if you're over 25 or something, you don't understand with somebody that's 25 and younger what they're doing. They move in a different way. When I was 20-something years old, I was doing stuff that my mom wouldn't have accepted of, that she didn't like. But with my son, I just want to make sure the school system is right. I hope we get justice from the police. A lot of people talk about, well, what about black on black crime? Well, y'all doing it to each other. Well, that's not the same thing. When somebody else kills somebody, he's going to jail. We want justice. Like, we saw a cop. What if somebody killed your brother and the murderer was walking on the street? Would you, and the police officers or the judge did nothing to him? That's all we want, is justice. So I hope the police department gets better, the school system gets better, and that's all I see with my son, man. Just,
And Brother Kozar, you said that you have a 15-year-old, 6'3", hanging out, about to get his driver's license, maybe in the process of doing that. What are your concerns? I know you voiced a lot of things already, but specifically when you look at him in the area that you're living in the KC Metro, what are your concerns? Even knowing his personality, even knowing the dynamics of maybe the community that you're living in, what are some things that really cross your mind specifically to him?
So we're looking at a systemic issue. This thing has been in place since 1619, and the police are doing. They're doing what they were created to do: police and control, keep us in our place. My concern, I want my son to have a relationship with God. Education is important, and knowing who he is. I call him a young king. And so we've been told, we've been given a lie. It's been ingrained us in schools, and some of us is in our churches. We've been ingrained, and there's been so much that has been ingrained into us, and we have believed what people have said. We got to understand. So I tell my son, you're made in the image of God.
Yeah.
You got the God type of stuff inside of you. So you got to know that. So we were leaving the store, and I had a basket, and I'm walking, and there was and pedestrians have the right of way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking with my basket. There's a car coming, and I just kept on going. Everybody stopped. I'm like, "Where y'all stopping? Let's go." And so he's like, "Well, you got a death wish?" I was like, "No, I have the right of way. I'm visible. Can't cower down to that. You got to know who you are, your position." And so for me, I want to show him a strong black man. I can't show him no weak. I got to show him something strong. And so if he sees that in me, then he can repeat that. Yeah. And so, education, we push education. My wife and I graduated from HBCU. My daughter graduated from HBCU. We do HBCU tours. My son, it's like, okay, where am I going? It's already, you already know this is where our money's going. We want to push him to have a sense of pride and not walk with his head down, but walk like a king. Yeah. When I'm talking to young man, we were going to a store the other day. I said, "Hey, what's up, kings?" My son is like, "Daddy, why you do that?" I'm like, because I got to know who they are. Mm-hmm. If I dress you like you something else, but if I dress you like a king, it's like, oh, what? Mm-hmm. You put you walk straight, you straighten up. It's like, because man, I'm calling you a king. What's up, my king? And that's how I dress young guys, because we got to know that. So I want him to have a sense of pride, and some other things I probably can't say, but I want him to have a sense of pride. Yeah. I want him to be and to love and embrace his skin.
Yeah. That's beautifully said. Just to having that pride within yourself. I know growing up, a little bit about my background is that my parents were in the military, and I grew up in all different types of countries all around the world. And a lot of the times, different countries where I was in, they celebrated the beauty of melanin, of that darkness and chocolateness in our skin. I didn't feel like I was being looked at like an alien. I mean, we lived in all different types of places, and I was like, when I came, sometimes when we would come back to our home, to the USA, right, where we're supposed to stand for freedom, stand for justice, right, and I would come home and I feel more like an alien here than when I was in other countries. Wow. Man, I just love that concept of trying to instill that self-worth. It took me a while to get there, to be comfortable in the skin that I am. And every day, sometimes I still have to check myself on it too. But I love that. That was really powerful. I kind of want to shift a little bit though. We've been talking about our children, talking about the hopes of the world, but everything that's going on with the pandemic and the revolution and everything, I just kind of want, as black fathers, as black men, how are you doing? If you check your own mind, your own heart, how are you? There's a lot of pressure during these times. I mean, jobs being lost, uncertainty in the economy, everything that's going on with the revolution, all of this you're processing while trying to lead your families. Yeah. And sometimes we, as the man, sometimes you're like, man, I can't show weakness to my family. I'm leading. you know what I mean? I got to be strong. But how are you doing? How are you doing?
You know, for me, I gotta admit it, I'm angry. But that's okay. The Bible tells us we can be angry and sin not. And so, in being angry, should, you know, you just don't want to be angry. You want to be angry and then create an action or support an action to bring about change. And so, you know, trying to educate white people to get them to understand. I had some conversations, you know, just this past week with some white people, you know, because they're trying to understand, you know, well, if the 4 police officers are in custody now and they're charged, why is everybody still upset? You know? And they ignorantly really just don't get it. That's like the tipping point of what happened. But it's so much more that has happened, you know, over the years. And so just trying to, you know, because the reality is that anytime there's been progress in America from the have-nots, it requires some of the haves to help support to bring about change. You know, even with Dr. King, when he marched, there was a lot of white people that marched with him that helped him get in the doors of some of the places that he wouldn't have been able to do if it was just a black movement. It was a human movement. It was a movement about change and things that need to be done. And so, you know, as black people, we've got to be able to try to find ways to educate white people to get them to understand and to see, you know, issues from our standpoint, so that they can understand. Because as long as, if I don't experience racism, then as a white man, then I can say it don't exist. But if I can get you to understand systematic racism from how I've experienced it, and get you to look a little bit into a glimpse into my world, then you say, oh, I didn't know. You know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of been the 2 different things that kind of have come together in one this year. You know, COVID-19 has been, it made you so aware, first of all, of everything that you do, you know. I have a young grandson that's in my house, and I work every day around people who are 80 or 90 years old. So for me, the idea that I could go into work and end up with something that I could pass on to somebody that would kill them, or even more so, something that will kill me, and I'll leave my family here, was very eye-opening. And in this situation, you know, you hear people debating on where it came from and how it started and is it real? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we're at 100,000 deaths already, and they're talking about another 100,000 in the next couple of months. Okay. So this COVID-19 has been, so for my son who's in college, and he sees he had to come home from school, you know, because he was a resident assistant in the student living down in school. Well, they shut the dorms down. He had to come home. Well, he's got all his guys. A lot of them had apartments. They didn't have to come home, so they're all in Columbia, kind of in their own little bubble. Very few cases in a place like Columbia. These are young college guys. They're not watching the news. So they're asking him, well, what are you even talking about? Like, why are you even tripping on this COVID-19 stuff? It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it is, brothers. Y'all just not able to see it in the same way. When I see what happened with 20 people that died coming out of a church right here in Kansas City, right there, when I see 8 cases and 2 deaths at a different facility across the street from us, it's right there, right across the street. So that has been one huge thing in our lives. But it also has allowed us to spend a lot of time together as family. It was work to home. And I think our relationship as a unit, and we already rolled as Team Jacks. That's just how we roll, you know. But our togetherness as Team Jacks is even more so because of the time we've been able to spend together. And then when you talk about the racism 20, as we call it, you know, that's been something for me that has been really made me be real introspective, because again, I see this revolution happening, but I want us to make sure that we actually see change this time. You know, I don't want us to just for a few weeks or a couple of days, you know, just and then everything goes back to normal until the next situation happens, and then we all get mad again. So I really feel how different this current time is, and I see the impact that it's really having on the world. And so it has made me really kind of start to think about what do we really need to be looking at and focusing on, making the police accountable. That's my thing. If you kill somebody unjustly, you go to jail. You don't just go and get off because the grand jury doesn't want to charge you because you're a police officer. That's not right, you know. You should not be able to just get fired and move on to the next agency, to another police department somewhere else doing the same thing. So to me, accountability has been one of the main things that I've seen that I would like to see out of this change. So, you know, this has been one of the craziest years ever in life. Nobody ever would have thought you would see the country shut down, people stay-at-home orders, and then followed by a revolution that has somebody like George Floyd named all the way around the world, literally, you know, and people pushing for change in this country. So, yeah, it's been something that I would not ask to go through, but as we always know, you know, God has us always. He never gives us more than we can bear. And you know, these are the opportunities for us right now in this country to make a change, so that my grandson doesn't have to go and fight these same exact fights 20 or 30 years from now. You know, that's what I want to see.
Three things have happened. Three significant things have happened this year. January 28th, 26th, 27th, 28th, you had the death of Kobe Bryant. Shook up the world. COVID, it was another country issue at that point. A month later, or a month and a half later, you have COVID-19 in America and the shutting down, and continued racism. And so so those have been three major things. You've never had a Hall of Famer. Kobe Bryant was the first Hall of Famer, a person of that status, to die. It was a major thing. And working in education, talking to young men, so we had the conversation about Michael Jordan. Again, I'm a Laker fan, but Kobe Bryant was the Michael Jordan for your era and younger guys. Because this is what Michael Jordan was gone. We saw Michael. Kobe Bryant was the guy that they saw. So that really hit them hard. Then you get COVID-19, and when you look at how the impact, it's a global impact. But when we look at who's the impact, it shut down the country. Unemployment numbers have skyrocketed. And so who's been, if you are black or brown or disadvantaged, then those communities have been hit the hardest. And then racism, and we already know, I mean, that's a whole, and so this year has been a hard year, particularly for blacks. Those three events, they were hard. And then so we have the lynching we have the public execution of George Floyd, but there's another execution that's not televised, and that's with black men who are educated black men, master's, doctorate degrees, and the unemployment or underemployment. We don't even, it goes so far up under, but I've had conversations with some of my counterparts, and it's like, you know, I lost my job during COVID. I've lost my job. I'm unemployed during COVID. I mean, you know, so, you know, it's real. It's real. No, none of my family, we're healthy, but you know, so it's real. And I'm a black man with a master's degree, and so there are companies I've applied for. They're saying, well, we're going to open this time, we're not going to open. I mean, so this thing is real. It impacts a lot of people different ways, because we probably all know somebody who's died. or somebody who's been sick, or we all know somebody who's been employed, unemployed, or who companies let them off. But you got small businesses shut down, and then you got the stimulus package, and a lot of those small businesses ain't get that money. I've read something the other day, and I probably shouldn't be quiet. It was saying that the millionaires, that 460 millionaires were going to get some astronomical number. It was crazy. Stimulus package. And it's like, oh, so we $1,200. You get $1,200, then you open the economy back, you open the country back up. So it's like you want more cases out there. And so I appreciate what Bishop did. I appreciate that. And saying, listen, we're not going to come back and search. We don't know when we're coming back. And for some people, it's like, well, I want to go back. But coming back, it just spreads it.
Right.
And so, we just had Memorial Day, and people, and so, like, what's going to happen? How many cases are we going to see in the next month or so? Because everybody's going back to business as usual.
Right.
So this thing is not over.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess my point on how I feel, I'm angry, I'm upset. One of the things that I've been doing to help myself is I basically cut everything off. I get on social media every now and then, but I just believe your mindset, like what you focus on, it kind of changes your mood. So I just been kind of working on myself, reading more books, and just figuring out what can I do to help the situation. I think the older generation should help the younger generation. My generation, we had Society of Gentlemen mentoring program. We help the kids, and we just got to continue to do that. We got to help the next generation become great. And I believe it's about economics now. We fought for the right to vote. Now it's about let's get our money right. And let's become, let's fight with the dollars and make sure this generation is good.
So a question, something that and it kind of led me there, Gary. You were talking about things that I do to kind of help myself and thinking about the next generation and giving back. Mm-hmm. So hypothetical question. If you could go back in time to 20-year-old Don, 20-year-old Mike, 20-year-old Gary, what is the advice you would give yourself, knowing everything you know now, knowing the struggles that you're going to have to face, the challenges you're going to have to face? What advice would you give that young you, knowing the systemic racism that you have to face, the challenges to get your education, the things that you're even walking through now? What would be the one thing that you would tell your younger self?
I know for me, I would encourage my younger self to just stay even more focused. I think that along the way you get discouraged, tripped up, off focus on things, and it can all you're doing is delaying things that eventually you would have had anyway. So if you stay focused on the right road, instead of having to go all the way around because you weren't really staying on point, you've just now delayed what it is, the manifestation of those things that were meant for you anyway. Because I believe that with my whole heart, what God has for you is for you. But we are our own worst enemy. We always trip ourselves up. So I would definitely say that, and to continue to develop even earlier on that strong relationship with God, because that's why I thank God for this ministry. I see the difference in the type of relationship that my kids have with God than even I did growing up, and I grew up in church, but it's just not the same. And I just thank God from children's church all the way through that development, because I see it in them. I recognize it in the way that they speak and in the things that they do, and the difference between them and even some of their other friends, the people they're around, for them to really understand that having that relationship with God is not only important, but it is the thing that will be the key to their ultimate path to success. is a blessing. And I just thank God for this ministry having been here in our lives to have helped push them in that direction. And so those would be, my main things. Stay focused, and develop that, that real relationship with God from the beginning.
I'd say also focus is very key, but I'd also say, not to lose hope, because typically when people lose hope, that's when you tend to see destruction. You start to see all kind of things go awry. So don't lose hope. Being able to stay focused, but being persistent. Persistence is so key, because so often people will give up right at the point where God is about to bring a change. And if you just stay persistent, and activate your faith, the Word of God says that we have access into this grace in which we stand. And as Christians, being able to access what God has for us, even though there is all kind of systematic, issues that are against us, we can still access what God has for us by faith. And so when we activate our faith, I would tell my young people, activate your faith sooner. That was a process that I had to learn how to, get what God has for me by accessing the faith. But that tends to be, you tend to see more your older and seasoned Christians accessing that faith and taking that step and that risk, because wherever you see in the Word of God where it talks about faith, you can replace with risk. Without risk, it's impossible to please God, and so, risk, if faith is the key and the essential. It was faith that brought us this far in the civil rights movement, and it's faith that's going to take us, wherever God, continues to move us. But faith is so key, but you can't start out with faith and then give up. You got to be persistent. You got to be persistent, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to let somebody else, but, when God, told Peter to come on the boat, and, he told him to come walk out on the water with me. Peter goes and walks out. Everybody else stayed in the boat. And when everything started happening, the wind blowing, Peter took his eyes off of God, and he sunk. But then when he got back in the boat, God, took his hand, grabbed him, put him in the boat. He said, "Ye of little faith." I didn't understand that. I'm like, hold up, Lord. He the only one got out. Everybody else stayed in the boat. But when you look at it, from the Greek, it's talking about short faith. He had short faith. He had faith to get out the boat, but he didn't have faith to continue to walk on. His faith was short. And so in being persistent and having that persistent faith is where it is, because a lot of people start. But who keeps that faith to continue?
Wow. That was good.
I would tell my 23-year-old self a couple of things. I would have married my wife. I would have waited and bought a house first. I would have got my master's degree, then we got married. And we ended up with job offers in Oklahoma City. And I would have told myself, don't take that job. Because I was going back, my wife, I just had graduated July 17th. We got married August 3rd. When our honeymoon, we get calls from Oklahoma about job interviews. She had applied for a job 8 months ago. I didn't even apply for a job. We got back, interviewed, moved her stuff back to Louisiana. I was going to work on my doctorate degree. She was going to work on her master's degree. I would have told myself, wait, go to school, finish, get your degree, because this little money that they're going to pay you, you could get that as an assistant, teaching assistant. I would have got my doctorate degree 23 years ago, 24 years ago, because that little thing. Because I took a job where I was getting paid peanuts, and I've had to climb a long hill, whereas had I finished got my degree, could have started at another place and would have never had to do that. And so that was had somebody said, Michael, finish your school, don't get that job. That's what I would say. But we got married, and then I would still marry. I probably would have waited till I got a house or bought a house first, because if we talk about how do we do things, that an insurance friend of mine told me, insurance is important, and property. If you want a great wealth, you got to get insurance. That's how wealth is created. Buying life insurance and property. So I would have finished school, bought a house immediately, because it would have just opened so many other doors for me. Those are two things I think I would have done.
It seems like a general theme of just patience. If I could just slow things down. I mean, as a young man, I'm not super young anymore. I'm getting kind of old. I'm 33 now, but I say the same thing for me too. I was in a rush. I was always in a rush wanting to hit the next level. I wanted to have this. I wanted to have that. I wanted to move here. I wanted to be married by this time. I wanted to have this by this time. And I was like, if you would just slow down, take your time, enjoy the moment, process, be persistent, think about the next step, and then move forward instead of trying to get everything. Build your little mini empire with your little raggedy car and all this over here, trying to get it fast instead of building something that will last long. I completely agree with that. That's powerful. Just that patience, that taking that time. So I don't want to prolong the conversation any longer, but I want to end on this last question. I know we talked about a lot of negative things, a lot of hard things, what's going on with us, all that type of stuff. But during this season, where are areas where you have found joy? What's kept you going? Where have you found joy? I know, Jackson, you said, man, during this time of pandemic, it's been crazy, but we've grown tighter than we've ever grown before. Yeah. Where have you found joy? Where have you seen those silver linings? Where have you seen God working behind the scenes on your behalf to say, you know what, I can see God in this? What keeps you going? What's brought you joy?
As I mentioned, for me, that time with the family, it was just earlier this week. We finally sat down together and watched the Kirk Franklin, Fred Hammond verses.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so cool to me because we love the music, okay? But when I'm hearing Kirk and Fred saying this song is from 96 or, 97 or 99, and my kids knew every word. My son wasn't even born till 99. My daughter was born in 96. So that means, okay, they've gotten that through over time, listening to what we listen to.
Yeah.
And so that was like, I know that seems, but that was so small, but it was so cool to me to know that I've been planting this seed. I've been watering those seeds, and that was just, that to me was so cool. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, is to realize that these kids grew up in an environment where these are all, and they were not just kind of knowing it, like, they was like, yeah, we were up dancing, we had a great time because of this music that brings us all together, and it was the coolest.
That's dope.
I found joy just spending time with my family. The COVID, it's been a blessing. Hitting that unemployment and getting that check. Just potty training my son too. When they called me back to work, it was just like, man, I know I was during the time, like you said, enjoying those moments. Like I'm running around, he's getting on my nerve, doing crazy stuff. But then when I go back to work, it's like, man, those are the times that I miss. And spending time with my wife. The first couple weeks we had to adapt to being around each other for 24 hours, so it was a little
rough.
But we made it through. And just spending time with my wife and son has been amazing, and trying to start different, creating multiple streams of incomes and writing down my goals. That's what I would tell myself. Write down some goals. And just know that you can do anything. The generation before us, they had separation with white people. Like, you can't go here. You can't use this water fountain. You got to use this one. So it was a limit to what you can do. So I would just basically tell myself that I can do whatever I set my mind to.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, and I just enjoy just spending time with my family. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
You know, I guess for me, you know, it's been great being able to, you know, have the family, you know, together more. That's been, you know, great. You know, both of my business being essential, you know, I've had to continue to, you know, been blessed to continue to function and work in that sense. But the one thing I guess, you know, I've been able to just see hope and be able to be encouraged is the fact that none of this caught God by surprise. Being able to just know that He set my end before my beginning, and that whatever it is that we're going through in this time, God already knew, and the provision is already there for what it is. It don't mean that you're not gonna go through some struggles. Don't mean there ain't gonna be some tough times. You know, we still gotta press. You know, but just being able to know, because sometimes things seem out of control.
Yeah.
It just seems like they're, you know, man, the devil is just, he's winning, and it just seems like there's just so much going on. But then to be able to just find that comfort in just knowing that God knew all of this was going to happen before it happened. And so there's a limitation clause on how far He's going to allow it to go, and there's a limitation on what is going to happen in society and with COVID and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I know we may think that the limit should have stopped already now, but God knows everything, and I take so much peace, you know, so much comfort in just knowing the fact that my Redeemer lives, that, you know, whatever is happening to me and to my family, that the provision of whatever God has for me was already set in place before I was even born. And that's just amazing to me. I mean, I get so much peace in that.
Wow. So, this last 3 months, this has probably been one of the most trying years of my life. And I don't want to go into the whole, but the joy. We were supposed to close on a home April 30th. I lost my job, so I couldn't get the home.
Good.
Sorry, bro.
I've been homeless since April 30th. Homeless. So when you think about homelessness, you think people on the streets. We were never in the streets. The joy. was able to secure a place this week and move in. Still unemployed. I couldn't find an apartment, but I could go buy a house. I could buy a house. All I needed was a job. I could go buy a house. I couldn't find an apartment. So, the joy was being able to put my family in our own space. That's the joy. Because I can still say, but God.
Yeah.
A house that we loved. Right, we were 3 days about to close and everything shut down. So we have our own space.
Praise God.
So, how do we make it dark heavy here, y'all?
That's real.
But
That's good.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real.
but God.
But God.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, fellas, I appreciate you being so vulnerable, so real, taking the time to have this conversation in the midst of everything that's going on. It's probably a good thing, probably for me and Gary. We got to get away from the wives a little bit. For everybody, have a little break from being in the house.
Edit that out. Edit that out.
I really appreciate you. Happy Father's Day. You are all amazing men of God. I appreciate you sitting on this couch and being down here with me. Brother Don, thank you for opening your home to us. To all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. And just a conversation from the hearts of fathers about everything that's going on right now. So our very last question is, who is ready to get their butt whooped on that pool table? Because I'm about to take some of these
This
clothes,
is one of the
shirts.
most competitive men I've ever seen in my life.
It's all about the
So,
fellowship.
that's all about the fellowship. That's the setup right there.
I don't take no.